Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. It's a little before 10 a.m. Monday morning here on the West Coast in the United States. And to my surprise, I hopped online. I looked at a video I made this weekend, just the comment section, just to keep track of what YouTube Nation thinks. And got a lot of emails, a lot of inspired emails in disagreement, strong disagreement with me on whether David Price should fight a Klitschko next. Many people, and it's surprising how many, to me at least, believe that David Price is not remotely ready to fight either Klitschko brother, and that David Price needs to go out there and he needs to fight the Tyson Furies of the world, the Derek Chisoras of the world, the Robert Heleniuses of the world, before he even thinks about fighting Vladimir Klitschko or Vitaly Klitschko. You know, I think, and let me encourage everyone to read those comments. A lot of the people making those comments are well-known boxing fans here on YouTube. They make a lot of comments to a lot of videos, and they're great commentators, right? Their posts are very well researched. They mention specific opponents, specific outcomes, specific boxing styles. But I'll say this, if I were advising David Price, unlike the well-intended commentators on Sky Sports, the telecast, which I thought was crazy at the end, right? Unlike the guys there who felt that David Price, arguably the best heavyweight in Europe, certainly, in my opinion, one of the best heavyweights in the world, but yet his own hometown channel, Sky Sports, was saying he's not ready, right? The comments talked about how he didn't want to just get the championship, he wanted to hold on to the championship. Let me make a few points, and these are relevant points you need to think about. David Price is not 22 years old. This is not a young pup fresh out of the kennel. This is a guy who is close to 30 years of age. He's in his prime right now, right? If he waits, if he suffers any kind of setback, right? It could be in the ring, right? Walking into a haymaker against a quality opponent, and let's face it, when we talk about David Price fighting for another year and a half or 2 years, you want to see him in there with quality opponents. People like Tyson Fury, right? Dangerous opponents. Mariusz Wach, Tomasz Adamik, right? Chris Arreola. So none of these matches are walks in the park. If David Price were to walk into a haymaker, get hit by a fighter, get dropped, get staggered, look questionable, whether he wins the fight or not, that could set back his career 12 to 24 months, right? That would allow a Klitschko to say David Price is not ready. Why would you want Price to take that risk? Let me say something else too. You know, Vitaly Klitschko, and keep in mind, he's a champion. So he has to deal with mandatory contenders. The only way he keeps the belt is if he satisfies the requirements of the belt. So he only has a limited degree of choice on who he fights. And he himself in interviews has said he only plans to fight 2 more times in his career. Now, given that Vitaly Klitschko, I'm sure, is aware of his legacy and wants to make sure that when he ends his career, He has painted himself in the best possible light professionally, right? My point to you is, if you wait 18 to 24 months before you call out Vitaly Klitschko, number one, will he even be there to be called out? Right? He might well be retired. Number two, even if he wanted to fight David Price, he might not be able to if you wait too long, because he may need to fight his mandatory contender to keep his title. And, more importantly, I believe he wants to tie up some loose ends. The most competitive footage involving Vitaly Klitschko in the last 5 years, I would argue, was the first round of his fight against Wladimir Solis, who's making a comeback. He fought this weekend. If I'm Vitaly Klitschko, I want to tie up that loose end. I don't want people out there saying that I caught a break because Wladimir Solis' knee unraveled in that first round. Right? So all I'm saying is, Vitaly Klitschko, your chances of fighting him are limited to begin with. If you're David Price, you have to start calling him out right now. You're on his timetable, not your timetable. If you want his belt, if you want to beat him, as opposed to whoever is awarded the belt after the fact, right? Whatever champ comes after Vitaly, in my opinion, unless they beat Vitaly, they're going to lack Vitaly's stature. If you want to put your name on the map and beat a champion with stature, you have to start calling him out early, not late. And if that champion says to you, I will fight you next, whether you're ready or not, you have to take that fight, because it's a legacy-making fight. And let me also say this too. With David Price's power, he has at least a puncher's chance in every fight he's in, right? And so all I'm saying is, look, you need to start calling out Vitaly now. It might take 6 months, it might take 12 months, it might take 18 months, but if he turns around and says, yes, I will fight you, it'll well be worth it. What you can't do is wait for the perfect time and place to call out a champ who already has had a long career, who doesn't need to fight you to maintain his legacy, and who may have other obligations, other opponents he needs to fight to keep his title. Let's talk about Wladimir Klitschko for a moment. Now, Wladimir Klitschko has a fight against a deserving opponent. Tony Thompson, as I pointed out earlier, actually did well against Wladimir the first fight, according to CompuBox numbers. Thompson also claims he had a knee problem. He actually had surgery on his knee. And Thompson claims, of course, that he took the fight with an injury because it was a heavyweight title fight, and you simply cannot bypass shots at the title. We wish, at least I wish, David Price has that attitude, right? So Vitaly's tied up right now. The earliest Price could possibly fight Vitaly would be toward the end of the year. Now, Vitaly is rumored to have a fight already scheduled against Chris Arreola. Now, that brings up my next point. If you don't believe that David Price is ready to fight a Klitschko, who's more deserving? Hasn't Chris Arreola already fought and gotten beaten down by Vitaly Klitschko? Not only that, did you watch Chris Arreola's last few fights against people like Manuel Quezada and a few other guys, and did you leave those fights thinking, wow, now he's really ready to fight Wladimir Klitschko? Did you really think that? All I'm saying is the quality of opposition that Chris Arreola has been fighting, is it really that vastly superior to the quality of opposition David Price has fought? Also, has Chris Arreola looked as good as David Price has looked in his fights? We know too that Price has an excellent jab, has height, has a length dynamic to what he's doing, right? I believe that length dynamic gives him a chance I'm not saying he beats Vladimir Klitschko, but it gives him a chance against Vladimir Klitschko. It makes that fight competitive. Does Chris Arreola have that length dynamic? When you see Arreola, do you stop and say to yourself, wow, he has a great jab? Is that what you're thinking? Let's talk about some of the other guys. Tomas Ademic. Doesn't he have the same problem Chris Arreola has? Didn't he lose to Vitaly Klitschko already? Right? All I'm saying is, fans want to see new blood. Right? Guys who have already lost to a Klitschko, even Tony Thompson lost to a Klitschko. Guys who have already lost to a Klitschko, to me, have less compelling claims for a shot at the Klitschkos than someone like David Price, who's unbeaten, who's never fought a Klitschko. Right? Let's talk about Robert Helenius. Now first, did you really feel that Robert Helenius beat Derek Chisora? Really? I thought Robert Helenius got beaten by Derek Chisora. And if you don't believe me, believe Vitaly Klitschko, who said he thought Robert Helenius lost to Derek Chisora. More importantly, Robert Helenius is injured. Right? Robert Helenius' camp wants you to believe that he's injured and he's taking time off to get his body right. He's out of the mix. Right? Who else is more deserving? Please, don't tell me Kubrat Pulev after that uninspired performance against Alexander Dmytrenko. And of course, Dmytrenko, who showed a distinct lack of heart in that fight, has no claim to be in the building when a Klitschko is in the ring. Right? Now, I'll agree, there are some fighters out there who have had some career resurgences. Michael Grant, for example. But all I'm saying is, take Michael Grant. Michael Grant already fought for the heavyweight title. Got destroyed by Lennox Lewis a decade ago. Right? If you look at the film of Michael Grant's victory over Francois Botha, Michael Grant was losing that fight. All Botha had to do to win that fight was stay on his feet the rest of the 12th round. Now, he didn't. I'm not saying Grant didn't get the knockout justifiably. Right? But let's face it, for the first 11 rounds of that fight, as you watch that fight, did you think that Michael Grant would make a more inspiring opponent against a Klitschko than David Price? I mean, all I'm saying is, and I know there are other names out there, right? Dennis Boystoff, a little bit short to fight the Klitschkos, doesn't really have the length dynamic that, David Price has. Marius Wack is compelling. If a Klitschko brother were to pick Marius Wack as their next opponent, all I can say is, hey, this would be an interesting fight. I don't think David Price could complain about that. But my point to you is simply, if you came up with a list of heavyweights who are more deserving to fight the Klitschko brothers, more deserving than David Price, wouldn't that list be awfully short? Not only that, don't you think today that David Price probably has more of a chance, or at least as good a chance, of beating Vladimir Klitschko as, let's say, Chris Arreola, who Vladimir Klitschko is rumored to be fighting later this year? I think you need to start calling out the heavyweight champions while they're still fighting, right? In the case of Vitaly Klitschko, you need to call them out while they're still fighting, literally as soon as you're a credible opponent. Price might get a shot within the next year. He might not. But what he should do is spend at least some of his time calling out the heavyweight champions. And if they accept his challenge, then he needs to be ready to go forward with the fight. Right? Beating a Klitschko would be more significant than beating whoever follows the Klitschkos as the heavyweight champion if they're awarded the belt after the Klitschkos retire. Right? You have two guys who sit atop of the heavyweight division. I would argue that David Price is as credible as any opponent short of Mariusz Wach to fight the Klitschkos, right? If I were advising David Price, I would say, hey, look, don't fool around with the Tomas Ademics of the world. Too dangerous. Number one, they don't fight like a Klitschko, right? So what exactly is Price going to learn in that fight? Number two, if you look bad in that fight, it's going to set back your career 18 to 24 months, and then you're going to be 32. And at that point, both Vladimir and Vitaly might well have moved on to the rest of their lives, right? So I think the time to call out a Klitschko is now. Don't lose sight of the fact that Price is almost 30 years old. He's in the prime of his career. If he wants a long reign as a heavyweight champion, now's the time to make the move, right? I'd like to see Gentleman Price literally get a little bit more boisterous in calling out the heavyweight champions of the world. Let me know what you think. I know YouTube Nation disagrees with me, or at least a huge block of you. But hey, this is a forum where we can disagree. Let's just air our views. Let's just talk our facts. And if there's a heavyweight I'm missing, and please, don't say Seth Mitchell, okay? If there's a heavyweight that I'm missing, if there's some guy out there who you feel is far more deserving, and again, don't say Razor Ruddock, right? If there's a heavyweight who's far more deserving, please tell me who that guy is. Let me also make a point too. I agree, in my opinion, Evander Holyfield, the senior citizen, would give both Klitschkos a hard fight. I also think Antonio Tarver would give both Klitschkos a difficult fight. I'll concede those two guys. I just don't see the public outcry. The problem with Holyfield is simply that he's had many shots at the heavyweight title, right? And the problem with Tarver, apart from the fact that he has a fight at cruiser with Latif Coyote, is he is the cruiserweight champion. Many people don't view him as a heavyweight. I'll agree that there are at least a couple other guys out there who would give the Klitschkos interesting matchups. I'll agree with that. My point to you is simply, with the boxing public, David Price is the fresher face. He's the more intriguing face right now. I think he's as credible as any opponent for the Klitschko brothers. And let me say this about Tyson Fury, because I know I'm going to hear a lot about Tyson Fury. I was very impressed that Tyson Fury was able to switch to southpaw and close the show in his last fight. But wow, didn't Tyson Fury struggle in that fight before the ending of it? Was Tyson Fury as convincing in his last fight as David Price was against Sam Sexton? You know, all I can say with Tyson Fury is he has a lot of talent. I believe he's sparred with the Klitschkos. I believe he too should be calling out the Klitschko brothers, but I cannot say, based on the film footage that I've seen, that he's the more credible opponent than David Price. Let me hear from you. Thanks for watching.